Welcome to the Runners Connect, Run to the Top, Extra Kick podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Extra Kick podcast brought to you by Runners Connect. Once again, this is Coach Claire Bartholic, and I'm still recovering a little bit from a summer cough if you are wondering why my voice sounds a little bit scratchy. Hopefully it will pass soon and my Katharine Hepburn voice will be gone along with it. So bear with me, please. Today, I'd like to talk to you about running on the treadmill. When it's hot as Hades in the summer or you're up to your eyeballs in snow in the winter, the treadmill can be a savior to keep you running when Mother Nature has other plans in mind. There's not too many people that actually love the treadmill, although there are a few. And there are certainly way many more runners that truly despise it and won't touch their toes on one. But if you do find yourself on the hamster wheel from time to time, how can you be sure that you are getting the same workout as you would outside? Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there have just said out loud, raise the incline to 1%. Well, raising the incline can make the treadmill a bit harder, but that's not the full story. In fact, I recommend that unless you are specifically doing hill work, leave the incline alone. I'll get to why in just a minute. So what's the deal with everyone thinking that you need to raise the incline to 1%? Well, the idea behind this is that the energy cost of running at any given pace on the treadmill is slightly lower than it is outdoors because you don't have to push against air resistance. In other words, for most people, the treadmill is easier than outside. So raising the incline neutralizes that. In addition, you also dissipate body heat more readily outdoors than you do on the treadmill. So by raising the angle of the treadmill belt to 1%, this difference disappears, and running on the treadmill is no longer easier than running outside. The 1% rule came about in the early 1990s when researchers found that at speeds of 8:03 minutes per mile and slower, the energy costs, both inside and out, were about the same. But when you crank it up to 7:09 minutes per mile and faster, then you need to raise the incline to 1% to create equal energy costs as outside. This is because air resistance increases at faster paces when one is running outdoors. So you need to compensate for that inside with the incline. So there you go. Keep the incline at 0 for slower speeds and crank it up to 1% for faster speeds, right? Not so fast. The problem with that quick and simple fix is that running is way more complex than that. There's a whole lot more going on when you run on a treadmill than just wind resistance. It turns out that even though running on a treadmill is easier physically, research shows that you are faster outside. That's right, you are faster outside despite the fact that it's harder. What's going on? Well, it has everything to do with your brain. Research studies on the treadmill shows that the test subjects' heart rates were higher at the same pace outside than inside, indicating that the athletes had to be working harder outside. So why weren't they faster if it was easier? Well, that's because your heart rate is an indication of how hard you are working, but it does not determine how fast you are going or how fast you can go. That is all about your perception of effort. It's how hard you feel you're working that determines performance, not your heart rate. So even though the body works harder when running outdoors than it does when running inside on a treadmill, running outside feels easier. And for those of you out there who loathe the treadmill, the reason is glaringly obvious. The treadmill is boring. And when you are bored or frustrated or angry or emotional, everything feels harder in life. Not to mention the lack of visual stimulation on the treadmill can cause you to hyper-focus on how hard running feels instead of being distracted by all the sights outside. Other explanations for lower perceived effort outside is that the airflow on your body is increased, which makes you feel better. You also actually feel like you're moving somewhere in space and time, and that visual perception of movement gives you a sense of accomplishment. And these factors have been shown to reduce perceived effort. Another possible factor is the ability to micro-adjust outside. You have a greater sense of freedom of movement outdoors, and you can make subtle and more frequent changes that you might not even be aware that you are doing, giving you a sense of freedom that feels more pleasant than banging away on the treadmill. That sense of autonomy in your movement improves your mood, so affects perceived effort. So, if you want to make your indoor runs as equivalent as possible to your outdoor runs, don't focus on the incline or your heart rate or even your pace. Leave the incline alone and focus on your perceived effort. If you have a hard workout, run hard. If you have an easy run, put a podcast in your ears, like the Extra Kick maybe, and run easy. When you have your effort level just right, you should find that both your speed and your heart rate are slightly lower than they would be if you are running at the same effort level on the road. In other words, you'll run a little slower and your heart rate will be a little lower, but you'll be getting the equivalent workout as you would outside because you are working just as hard. Now, if you want to get your Garmin readings to match the treadmill readings exactly, that's an entirely different podcast topic, but do you want to know what I do? I just go with the one that tells me I'm faster. Well, that's it today for the Extra Kick podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Go out there and have a great run today.